Hi everyone, welcome to Nicole Reacts, where I, Nicole, react to online marketing gurus that I find, or who find me, on the internet. I'll get into that in a second. My qualifications for snark and commentary are that I've owned a legitimate marketing company for almost 15 years, working with mainly small business clients on online marketing strategy and implementation, a little bit of web development sometimes in there. And I have a fair breadth of experience and content knowledge when it comes to online marketing. And things related to it like search engine optimization, website development, and that kind of thing. So today's person actually came to me via a different person. Let me just show you the series of emails, which I will block this person's contact information. But it's typical cold pitch email. And I'm intrigued by the website that this came from and also the expert that this person suggested I book a one-on-one consulting session with. So here's the first email sent October 18. And basically, it's saying, hey, you should book a session with Nir Eyal. By the way, Nir wins because his website URL for his company website is nirandfar.com, Nir, because that's how his first name is spelled. I love a good pun. So Nir, you win at having a good URL. But this person isn't from Nir's website. This person is a complete other person from a website, which is the only thing linked here besides opting out of this marketing message that I never opted into with Ask Me. And so I clicked through to this website and it's kind of funny. I think they're still building it. So this is the site and it's basically connecting one-on-one with experts, right? So I can view the experts and it looks like I can book kind of one-on-one consulting time with them. And as you see, it's kind of a generic looking website. Doesn't look bad, but the reason I say I think they're still building it is that there's some lorem ipsum content. So if you look here beneath a couple of the names, it says lorem ipsum. And what that is, if you don't know what that is, it's filler text that you put on a website. So sometimes you're designing and the client hasn't sent you the content to work with, but you have to have content to be able to design around it. And so you put this filler text in, and there's all different, there's standard lorem ipsum, and you can just go to online and you can generate, like, let's say you need 5 paragraphs worth of content. It'll basically generate 5 paragraphs of gibberish that you can design around. Also, if you sometimes try to write something, clients will, instead of giving you feedback on your design, will start, trying to wordsmith your writing when really you just want to get them to approve kind of the page layout or something. So lorem ipsum has a couple of uses, but on a live website, it kind of shows me that things are a little bit weird. Also, so let me see. Yeah, so here's some experts, and a bunch of them don't have pictures. So let's go view all experts. And I guess there's only 6 of them. That's weird because at the top of this page, it has Nir Eyal showing on here like they're on the website. But I don't see them in the list of experts. So I'm just very confused. I don't know if it's one of those things where this person is reaching out to me, and if I write back saying I'd want a one-on-one consulting session with Nir, he would reach out to Nir and say, oh, hey, this person wants to consult with you through our website. We can add you. But it looks like the price points they're sort of expecting are $100 for 20 minutes or $190 for 20 minutes or $98 for 20 minutes. So kind of high end in terms of an hourly rate, which I guess we would sort of expect with maybe a nationally known or a New York Times best-selling type consultant. But I don't know who these people are, but a lot of them don't even have pictures. So, and like I said, the experts that they're showing here don't even seem to be listed on the site in the experts section. So I'm just very confused about this. But don't worry, this person didn't only email me one time, they emailed me several times. So Tuesday, October 18, I don't answer because I get a lot of email. As you see, I have 1,025 unread messages. That's pretty typical. And I do spend like 2 days a week on my email. So here is a second email sent Thursday, October 20th. So they gave me a whole 48 hours. And then I got this email. So in the last email, I introduced you to Nir Eyal, business and product expert and author of 2 bestsellers. You can book a one-on-one mentoring session on Ask Me for any of the mentioned topics. So it sounds like the topics are specific, but I don't know if Nir knows that they are on this website. So if I'm an entrepreneur, especially a small business owner or a CEO, a mentoring session with Nir Eyal is just what I need to get to my A game. This person assuming I'm not on my A game, by the way, a little bit offended. So I get another email today, which is October 25th, which is when I'm recording this. And, hey, I haven't heard back from you. I genuinely feel a one-to-one meeting session could do amazing things for your business. So click on the link below and book your session now. So it just brings me, when I click on it, to the main website. So I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to do. I guess I'm supposed to sign up, but I don't want to give them any more contact information for me than they already have. So I'm not going to do that. But the fact that it didn't bring me to a specific booking form for Nir Eyal was kind of weird. So in short, and someone sends you a shiny looking website like this, you don't need to be super impressed. Someone like me could have built this website in less than one workday, probably within a few hours if I had all the content ideas ready to go. But yeah, I mean, they haven't even finished it yet from what I can tell. So I think that that's interesting. So all this has been kind of a side quest though to our actual person, which is Nir Eyal. And Nir Eyal, I didn't know the name, but I have heard of his book called Hooked, which came out in 2014 about building habit-forming products. And he's written another book in 2019, which also sounds like it was a bestseller. He has an MBA from Stanford, and he kind of, I guess, was in the Facebook ads game and sort of got into the sort of marketing psychology of products. And that is sort of his subject matter expertise now. So I tried to find a video today of him kind of talking about something related to marketing, but I guess if you're building habit forming products, that's kind of like marketing. A lot of this stuff, product development or PR or, there's some things that are sort of not exactly marketing, but marketing adjacent. And I feel like this is one of them. So I thought we would watch, it seems like it's his signature talk. I looked for his name on YouTube and I saw basically a bunch of versions of this talk. So we're going to just pick one of them, which is the one we're reacting to today. It's called Hooked: How to Build Habit Forming Products with Nir Eyal. And it is on the channel The Product Folks. It runs approximately 57 minutes. So yeah, let's give it a watch. Okay, so I was wrong. This is an hour long, but it looks like this was uploaded in the last year, which is one of the reasons that I picked it. And obviously it looks like it's a live stream because it looks like there's other guests as well. And maybe Nir's camera isn't turned on right off, whereas the host's camera is turned on. So I'm going to turn up the volume so that you guys can hear well.
Awesome. We're live, folks. Thank you so much for joining in. Quick mic check. Can you hear us all right? Can you see us all right? And let us know what you think, how you're feeling right now. Drop it in the chat section. In case you're joining in on the air meet, in case you're joining us on YouTube, please do drop it. Okay, I already see a bunch of reaction. I know all of you all are very, very excited to get started on this new journey. As well as listen to our guest speaker today. I think it's going to be a very, very exciting session. We're all huge fans of Nir Eyal in this community. I know lots of you all are very, very excited to learn more about product analytics. So, not holding it off any further, let me quickly share my screen and share the agenda for today's session as well as what's in store. So many of y'all might have already participated in Insurjo, so you probably know how the sessions will look like, what you have in store for the next 5 weeks. We'll have to.
Okay, for a second I forgot to hide the screen sharing of StreamYard, but he forgot to hide it.
Here what are you looking forward to as well? Keep dropping it in the chat section. I think I am seeing lots and lots of activity there, and I will also pick it up from there. But quickly getting started, this is a 60-minute time slot where we have the first 5-10 minutes where we will be sharing a little more about the community, about why we're doing this particular cohort. It's on product analytics. That is one of our first deep dives that we are getting into. We'll give a huge shout out to our partners today. And then we'll quickly get started with today's session. So maybe about 5-10 minutes where we spend some time on what you can look forward to over the next 5 weeks, and about the next 30-35 minutes where Nir will be sharing lots and lots about how you can get. So if you have read his book on Hook, you will know how important it is and how lots of these consumer apps are putting this into applications. So we will also learn from Nir on how to build habit forming product, which is super important. Um, and then towards the end, if you folks have any questions, please drop it on the Q&A tab. We will curate this and pick this up. We have a total of 60 minutes, so we will pick up the most upvoted. So in case you enjoy or you like some question there, please help us upvote and we'll pick that up.
I'm wondering if he keeps saying, he said twice in this time frame that the presentation is 60 minutes. I wonder if he's charging them by the hour, like that website sort of implied.
Without further ado, I know I'm seeing a lot of people saying they're excited on the chat section. So, folks, without further ado, would love to give a shout out to our partners for today's event. Huge shout out to Amplitude. It is probably the best product analytics tool out there. So, in case you haven't checked it out yet, do definitely check out this tool. We will drop out a link in the chat section. Um, to be honest, I think they've been a huge support to the entire ecosystem as well as our community. Um, we will also be having, I will share that on the next section, but we will also be covering one hands-on session on how you could use this tool. So do definitely check it out. Also a huge shout out to Airmeet. You guys have enjoyed this as a platform. You're currently using it. Thanks to them for bringing this and for being able to host such a platform, host such a event on a platform like this. So thanks so much, team.
I don't know why there's an anchor there. I will my the name of my co-working space is called Anchor Space. I don't know why, I just loved that name. For like, you place where you can anchor yourself, but also you have the space to grow. Anyway, there's a random anchor there, which doesn't seem to be tied in. I know that we're on the YouTube channel for the product folks, so I'm guessing they're the ones kind of putting it on. And there's two partner logos on the screen, Amplitude and AirMeet. I just don't know where this little, I don't know if it goes with the sort of boat theme of the slides, but the anchor just seems really random here.
Um, Now to the product analytics 101, right? So I've been seeing a lot of buzz on social media, on our Slack channel, where lots of y'all have joined in to learn with us over the next 5 weeks. Like we shared earlier, I think this one is in participation from a lot of you folks, but also we will be learning hands-on skills. Lots of startups today use Amplitude as a tool, so it is super important for you all to get hands-on. And we've got lots of feedback from them on how to structure the next 5 weeks. So you will be learning all the skills that is used in the industry today. I will also walk you through the next 5 weeks what you can expect. But just two housekeeping rules. Do confirm if you have joined the private community. If not, just DM one of us. I think Diti and Shakti are there on the chat section. They can help you out. Don't crowd the chat section, but DM them. Just join our Slack community and DM them. They will add you in.
DM them, but don't crowd the chat section. So, like, do we not message them, or do we hold off maybe till further in the presentation? I don't know, kind of a mixed message there.
And second is we have the entire knowledge base that we've created on Notion, just like how we've done for Insurjo. And we share this on your emails. In case you haven't received that, please DM us on Slack. You can join our community and DM us there. We will help you out. So just two housekeeping rules. Let us know if you have any other questions. We'll be happy to help you out. And getting started just before
Okay, so they got the anchor moved in the second slide, and now we have a pirate for the team. So I don't know. The nautical metaphors are just weird, but
just before we get started with the session, Huge shout out to the team. I think just like we had a lot of things to do backstage with Sergio. Again, a huge team coming together, put this together for you all. And special mentions to Parth, to Diti and Shakti. I think they've gone that one step ahead. You would have seen them all super active on the community, helping you out with all your queries. Um, and this is over and above what they're already doing, right? So, like, huge shout out to you folks. Whatever you guys will be learning over the next 5 weeks, they've been planning this for quite some time, and everyone else who's been supporting them, getting this to where it is today. Um, Quickly walking you through the next 5 weeks.
Where'd the anchor go?
First one is definitely the 101. We have a couple of these recordings which we will be sharing with you as pre-reads. So please go through that. But week one, we will start off with the 101. In week two, we will deep dive, like, get deeper into these product analytics tools, and we will especially be doing a hands-on workshop on how you can actually get into this data and make some useful decisions. We will do exact dates will be announced, but we will do a hands-on workshop on Amplitude. Week three, we will talk everything about metrics. So how do you gather this data and how do you make product decisions with it? On week four, I think lots of people talk about how experimentation is super important. So how do you get these things together now that you've been digging into the data? You've been able to set up your instrument. You've been able to instrument your events. Now how do you use these to make meaningful experimentation? And week five, I feel, is the little more advanced topic. It is on cohort analysis. So at the end of 5 weeks, you should be set. Whether you are getting into a product analyst role, whether you're getting into a product manager role, you'll be super confident on going into this, right?
I will say this agenda for learning looks really good. Something I've been trying to figure out is that before the pandemic, the co-working space I own, we were doing monthly professional development workshops. They were about 2 hours long. We did them on a Friday afternoon and it would end around 4:30 or 5, and then we'd kind of transition into a happy hour to like let people kind of get to know each other and see the space and all that. But then since the pandemic, a lot of, I guess, business groups have started hosting like online lunch and learns and things like that. And I've been trying to figure out like how can I create something that would be useful for my co-working space members that was more in depth than like a 1 or 2 hour lunch and learn, but that wasn't a full-on semester long college class. So I like this model of like the sort of multiple weeks and it concentrating on a certain like skill set, right? Which is that after taking this 5 week cohort program class, whatever we're going to call it, that you would understand how to analyze and improve your products. So I think that this looks really neat, actually. I might go look into what this is a little bit more.
Um, so if you have any questions, feel free to drop it in the chat section. I think I'm seeing some. We'll pick these up towards the end. And if you have any session, any questions for today's session, please drop it in the Q&A tab. We will have a 10 to 15-minute fireside chat towards the end. With that, we'd love to invite our guest speaker for today, Nir. Thank you so much for joining in. Quickly saying hey from the entire community to you.
My pleasure. Thank
I like how he's wearing like the same shirt as he is in his author photo.
you so much for having me.
Thanks so much, Nir.
Yeah, so
Awesome, awesome. Real quickly, like just a one line intro, I think it is there. But Nir is someone who is truly respected in the product community. He's been sharing a lot of insights around, how do you build. One is, of course, something that we'll be sharing a lot more in detail today on building habit forming products. But he's also found two tech companies, been in the ecosystem for a long time. He's taught at the Stanford Graduate School of Business, and been an evangelist with Amplitude. So lots of knowledge that you guys can actually pick off from today. So any questions that you all have, please feel free to add it on the Q&A tab. And Nir, yes, handing it over to you for the next 30 to 40 minutes is all.
All right, terrific. I think oh, there we go. Okay, give me 1 second. Let me just share my screen.
Okay, it's not the exact same shirt, but it's
okay.
gray.
Can you see the slide says hooked?
Yes, we can see.
All right, terrific. All right, welcome everyone. It is great to be with you today. I'm so excited for this session and to take your questions.
See, nirandfar.com. Because that's my favorite domain that we've seen on the Nicole Reacts series so far.
after I kind of give an overview. I know some folks have read my book, which I'm hugely honored that you have. But for those who haven't, or maybe those who need a quick refresher, what I wanted to do is to give you this overview of how to build habit-forming products, so that for the rest of the class, you have the backbone, the model that you'll need to help you design the kind of products that people love to use, that people use on their own, not because they have to, but because they want to. Fundamentally, how do we get people hooked to our products and services? Because we've all seen that these devices that we carry around with us can have a profound impact on our day-to-day lives. And so what I wanted to do is to understand, what is it about these world-changing companies that tend to start out as toys, right? These nice to haves, these products that people oftentimes dismiss and say, okay, they've seen something like that before, and yet somehow capture the behaviors of hundreds of millions, if not billions of users, and they make hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars in the process. What I wanted to do was to study the patterns behind these products and services. And you know the usual suspects: Facebook, Twitter, WhatsApp, Slack, Snapchat, not just in the consumer web space, but in the enterprise space as well. Salesforce, GitHub, Stack Overflow, lots of companies, both in enterprise as well as consumer web, they have to form these habits or they go out of business. And so what I want to do is to help you identify these patterns that we see identified time and time again in habit forming products, so you can use these techniques in your own product or service. Now, you may be familiar with my book, Hooked: How to Build Habit-Forming Products. There's a lot in the book we don't have time to cover. We wanted to leave plenty of time for your questions, and so we can answer, things that you can't find in the book. But I just wanted to mention that there's a lot more here that we're not going to have time to cover. But I want to dive right in by getting us all on the same page around what is a habit. Okay, we want our products to be habit forming, but what does that actually mean? A habit is nothing more than an impulse to do a behavior with little or no conscious thought. It's about half of what you do every single day, day in and day out, is done out of habit. These behaviors that we do with little or no conscious thought. A habit is not an addiction. There's a big difference between an addiction, which always is harmful, and a habit. Habits can be very good for us. And so what we want to do is to help use these habits for good. We want to help people build happier, healthier, more connected, more productive lives by helping them form good habits. So don't tell me you're trying to build an addictive product. Addictions are always bad. We want to build habits.
I'm glad he said that, because this whole hooked, when I think of the word hooked, I think of something I am dependent on but don't want to be dependent on, like hooked on drugs. So I'm glad that he's making this distinction, because I was a little bit going into this thinking that I want to make my products better, but I don't want to manipulate people. And it sounds like he is aware of that line and is going to stay on the healthy side of that line, which I appreciate.
Habits can be used for good. And there's a explosion of companies these days that are using this hook model to do exactly that. Companies like Fitbod are getting people hooked to exercise. Companies like Kahoot are getting kids hooked to online education. We can use the hook model. Financial services product are getting people hooked to saving money. There's all kinds of ways we can build healthy habits in people's lives by getting them hooked to healthy habits. The way we do this is we use what's called the hooked model. The hooked model is nothing more than an experience designed to connect your user's problem to your product with enough frequency to form a habit. And it's through successive cycles, through these hooks, this is how our preferences are shaped, how our tastes are formed, and how these habits take hold. So what we're going to do for the next few minutes is walk through how to build your hook model. How can you design your product experience in such a way that you increase the likelihood of forming a new consumer habit? And to do that, we have to make sure that users walk through these 4 basic steps every time they interact with our product or service. They have to go through the trigger, the action, the reward, and finally the investment phase. So let's dive right in. Triggers are the first step of the hook model, and there are 2 kinds of triggers. The first kind of trigger is what we call an external trigger. An external trigger tells us what to do next with some kind of information in our environment, something in the outside environment. So it's a ping, a ding, a ring, anything in the outside environment that tells us some piece of information for what to do next. Click here, buy now, play this, anything in the outside world that gives you information for what to do. Now, external triggers, you'll be very familiar with, right? We in the product design community, we know all about external triggers. You see them every day as a consumer. But what product people don't think about enough, and what actually turns out to be incredibly important from a habit forming perspective, is to create an association with what we call an internal trigger. An internal trigger, unlike an external trigger that provides you information in your outside environment, an internal trigger gives you information for what to do next by creating an association or memory inside the user's own head. So what we do when we're around certain people, certain places, situations, routines, and most frequently when we experience certain emotions, prompts us to do the next action, to do the behavior out of habit, out of little or no conscious thought. The most frequently occurring internal triggers are these emotions, but not just any emotion. They are negative emotions, negative emotions. So what we do when we're feeling lost, bored, fearful, stressed, anxious, fatigued, when we feel these uncomfortable emotional states, we look for relief. We look for something to scratch that itch, that uncomfortable emotional state.
All right, so this is like my third take trying to say this, but there is a certain thing that as a marketer, I'm not willing to do that I'm sure has cost me some sales, which is I'm not willing to appeal to someone's negative emotions to sell them something. So please note that that's not toxic positivity. I'm not saying that all the marketing has to be positive, but I'm not willing to put someone or intuit someone into a negative emotional state and then try to sell them something. So, for example, if I'm marketing a luxury rental property, I am not going to imply that only that someone can't afford it or something like that. Even though I'm sure that that technique, if I did it correctly, would actually get some bookings, I just can't bring myself to do it. It feels gross. It feels manipulative. And so I'm really curious because it sounded like at the beginning of this presentation that this guy was committed to saying like, hey, listen, we want habits. We want what's good for people. We're going to walk the line between sort of like creating things that are better and not manipulating people. But this negative emotion part is feeling a little right now. We'll see. Maybe he's going to explain it better and I'm just not letting him. So let's keep going.
So the goal of a habit forming product is to associate itself with that internal trigger. If you don't believe me, it turns out that studies have found that people who are suffering from clinical depression check email more. Now, why would that be? Think for a minute. Why would people suffering from clinical depression check email more? It's not the email that's making them depressed. It's actually the fact that people who are suffering from clinical depression experience what we call negative valence states more often. They feel down more often in their day-to-day lives. And what do they look for to take their mind off of that emotional discomfort?
Information, connections to other people, problems to deal with.
They go on the web, they check email, they look at their apps more frequently than the rest of the population. But if we're honest with ourselves, we all do this, right? Every product or service you use for one reason. And that one reason is to modulate your mood, to make you feel something different. Let me ask you, where do people go when they're feeling lonely, when they're seeking connection?
The internet.
Where do they go? What app or website do they open up? Well, for many people, they check Facebook. And what about when you're unsure about something? Before you scan your brain to see if you know the answer, you're instantly Googling it, right? Out of little or no conscious thought, out of habit. And what about when you're feeling bored in the afternoon? You know, between 2 and 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you have that big project.
Probably Reddit, but he's probably going to say Twitter here.
You don't want to work on right now. What do? Well, maybe you hop on over to YouTube or Reddit or check stock prices, the crypto markets, Reddit,
He mentioned Reddit twice.
Television. There's lots and lots of solutions to this uncomfortable emotional state of boredom. We don't like that feeling of boredom, and we look for relief with the products and services that we use. So what's the lesson here? The lesson here is if you are building a habit-forming product, if your business relies on unprompted user engagement, you want people to use the product on their own, out of habit, you have got to be able to tell me what is your internal trigger. I can't tell you how many product teams I work with over the years who tell me about all the amazing whiz-bang, incredible technology features that their product can do. But when I ask them, okay, but what's the consumer's itch? What's that psychological pain point? They don't have a clue. And if you don't know what that psychological itch is, you're flying blind. You're just hoping to get lucky. You've got to be able to articulate what that internal trigger is so that you can build a solution for it. I mean, what's so awesome about the work that we all do for a living is that we get to solve people's pain. How awesome is that, right? Like other than a doctor, How many professions solve people's pain? I mean, that's what we do for a living. We're so lucky that we have those kind of jobs. And so this is an absolutely critical step. If you're designing a product or service that you want to become a habit, you've got to be able to know what internal trigger you are solving for.
I don't know. I think there's some satisfying professions that are not marketing slash sales or doctors. I think there's probably, I think any line of work where you feel like you're helping somebody else. I think most jobs where you work with people, you get to help somebody else, even if that's a coworker versus a customer. So I don't know. I think that's a little odd, but
now there's a lot more to be said about triggers, but for the sake of time, let's move on to the next step of the hook model, the action phase. The action phase is defined as the simplest behavior done in anticipation of a reward, the simplest thing the user can do to get relief from that discomfort. Let me show you a few habit-forming products, and I want you to see how easy that key behavior is. Something as simple as a scroll, okay, on Pinterest or Etsy or any number of other sites, just that scroll. Or what about a quick Google search, right? How easy is that? Or how about just pushing the play button on YouTube or Netflix? Very easy behavior done in anticipation of a reward. Now, there's actually a formula that helps us design for these singular behaviors. It comes to us from a psychologist at Stanford, where I used to teach, by the name of BJ Fogg. He tells us that for any human behavior B, we need three things at the same time. For any behavior, online, offline, doesn't matter. We need motivation. That's the M. We need ability. Ability is how easy or difficult something is to do. And the T stands for triggers. We just talked all about triggers. So let's talk about the M and the A, motivation and ability. Motivation is defined as the energy for action by Edward Deci, the father of self-determination theory, the energy for action, how much we want to do a particular behavior. And here we have these 6 levers of motivation that we can pull on to make a behavior more or less likely to occur, because all of us as human beings, we seek pleasure, we avoid pain. We seek hope, we avoid fear. We seek social acceptance, we avoid social rejection.
And see, I feel like I'm sticking with my marketing, whether it's for our own marketing or for our clients' marketing, on the seeking part of this versus the avoiding part of it. Like that feels better to me. I don't know.
So when it comes to motivation, one industry that masters these elements of motivation is, of course, the advertising industry. So every television commercial, every radio spot, every banner ad you've ever seen fundamentally utilizes these 6 levers of motivation to make a behavior more likely to occur. But what's actually more important than motivation is ability. Ability is the second part of B equals MAT. The A stands for ability, which is defined as the capacity to do a particular action, how easy or difficult something is to do. And here again, we have these 6 levers that we can pull on to make a behavior easier, or to make a behavior more or less likely to occur based on these 6 factors of ability. Time, how much time something takes. It has an impact on how likely people are to do the behavior. How much money something costs. How much physical effort is required to do a behavior. Brain cycles. This is a big one when it comes to tech products, because the harder something is to understand, the less likely people are to do that behavior. We call this cognitive load, right? So the easier you can make something to understand, the more likely people are to do it. Social deviance says that we become more likely to do something when we see other people like us doing it. And finally, non-routine says that we become more likely to do something simply for the fact that we have done it before in the past. Now, how does this work? The more we do a particular behavior, the easier it becomes, and the more likely we are to do it again in the future. What do we call this? This is called practice, right? The more we do it, the easier it gets, the more likely we are to do it again and again. So we can actually use these 3 factors on this conceptual model. This is really, really helpful. So in your product careers, if you design an amazing website, an unbelievable app, whatever it is that you're designing, and darn it, people aren't doing the thing you've designed for them to do. They're not clicking, they're not progressing, they're not opening, whatever the case might be. If the behavior is not occurring, it's only because of one of 3 reasons. Either the user lacks motivation on the y-axis, right? High motivation, low motivation. Or they lack ability, okay? If something is easy to do, it's on the far right. If something is hard to do, it's on the far left. And when the user has sufficient motivation and sufficient ability, they cross that red threshold, but only if a trigger is present will the behavior occur? Online, offline, enterprise, consumer web, it doesn't matter. Your behavior, your kids' behavior, your customers' behavior, every click, every action, every transaction requires these three things: motivation, ability, and a trigger every single time. If the behavior isn't occurring, it's because one of these three things are missing. Okay. So that's a brief overview of the action phase. Let's move on to the reward phase. The reward phase is where the user gets what they came for, where their itch is scratched a little bit. Now, when we talk about rewards, we have to talk about the brain. And in particular, there is a way to supercharge desire. That in fact, there is a way to essentially plug into people's brains and manufacture desire. Does anybody want to know how to manufacture desire? Is anybody curious?
Intermittent rewarding.
Well, I'm doing it to you right now. And when I took that long pause and I stopped talking, some of you perked up. Wait, what's this guy going to say? Why isn't he talking anymore?
Okay, so doing something unexpected, maybe?
What's the answer to the question? And so what I just did was to utilize what's called a variable reward, because the unknown is fascinating. By taking that pause and changing my cadence and asking you an unknown question, you wanted to know more.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of habit studies that like intermittently rewarding is more likely to form a habit. So for example, like in our project management system, when we check something off, once in a while, and I can't figure out there's a narwhal that flies across the screen. Like, good job, flying narwhal. But I only get the flying narwhal intermittently. I don't get it for every task I finish. And it's not like I never get it, right? So I'm kind of, when I check off the thing, I'm like kind of on the lookout for the flying narwhal. So yeah, intermittent rewards, however you can build them in, are what I guess forms habits generally.
Focused, you engaged. What's going on here? And so that unknown, that variability causes us to engage, it causes us to focus, and it is highly habit forming. This was first discovered by the work of B.F. Skinner, the father of operant conditioning. He took these pigeons back in the 1950s and he put them in a box that today we call a Skinner box. He gave these pigeons the opportunity to peck at this little disc whenever they were hungry. What many people don't know about this experiment is that Skinner starved his pigeons. These pigeons were very hungry because if the pigeons weren't hungry, they wouldn't peck at the disc to get the food pellet.
So you have to feel a little bit desperate for some of this stuff to kind of work the way it should. Interesting. Like, so if you're fulfilled, maybe some of these tricks don't quite work on you as well. The other thing that I think is interesting is that, for example, I know that algorithms or certain algorithms reward regular behavior. So for example, these videos are always uploaded and will stream on Friday at noon Eastern Standard Time every single week. And part of that allows me to maybe get some live viewers, which helps the algorithm. Some of it is that people know when to expect it. And so they can sort of like see when I schedule a broadcast and RSVP that they're coming, or otherwise like leave comments on it. So I'm kind of curious how he's going to sort of resolve this, intermittently giving something with the fact that consistency is often rewarded in online marketing and in other things as well.
Just like we can't make our customers or users do what we want them to do, click our buttons, unless they have that need. Okay, so if the pigeons didn't have the internal trigger of hunger, they didn't peck at the disc to get a reward. But if they were hungry, just like if our users, our customers are hungry, if they have that internal trigger, then they might be receptive to take an action to relieve that internal trigger. So in this case, Skinner could very quickly train his pigeons to peck at the disc and get a food pellet. Great. That's called operant conditioning. No big deal. If you have a puppy at home or kids at home, you probably have trained someone or something's behavior based on giving a reward for a particular behavior. That's nothing special. What was special is that one day Skinner walked into his lab and realized he didn't have enough of these food pellets. He couldn't afford to give these pigeons a treat, a little reward every time they pecked at the disc. He could only afford to give it to them once in a while. So sometimes the pigeon would peck at the disc, no reward, no food pellet. The next time the pigeon would peck at the disc, they would receive a reward. And here's the cool part. What Skinner observed was that when the reward was given on a variable schedule of reinforcement, the pigeon pecked more often. They were more engaged when there was variability involved in the receipt of the reward. And we see this phenomenon at work in all sorts of products and services because we know that variability stimulates a part of the brain called the nucleus accumbens, which creates this desirous response, this wanting reflex. And so in all sorts of products, online, offline, enterprise, consumer web, it doesn't matter, you will always find one or more of these three types of variable rewards in every habit-forming products.
So in general, we try not to use the word tribe because it means something to indigenous people, to native people. So we could say group or other things. I'll link to the same resource I linked to in the Rachel Hollis video when she used the word tribe, but just bringing it up here in case he doesn't.
Rewards of the tribe, rewards of the hunt, and rewards of the self. Let me introduce these to you briefly. Rewards of the tribe are things that feel good, that have this element of variability, and come from other people. This is about the search for empathetic joy, feeling good because someone else feels good, partnership, cooperation, competition. All these things have this element of variability, this element of the unknown, feel good, and come from other people. Best example online is social media, right? So when you check WhatsApp or TikTok or Facebook or Slack, right? Any of these tools have an element of variable reward that comes from other people. What did people post? What are the reactions? How many likes does something get? High degree of variability in the form of rewards of the tribe. The next type of variable reward is what we call rewards of the hunt, which stems from our primal search for resources, material possessions, and in modern society, information. Now, when people think of variable rewards, they oftentimes think of gambling, right? They think about the variability that comes with playing one of these games of chance, right? When you pull on a slot machine or play a roulette wheel, nobody stops watching a turning roulette wheel. Well, you want to see what the outcome's going to be. You want to see if you might win one of these games of chance. We see the exact same psychology at work online. Consider the feed. Why is it that almost everything these days has a feed, right? All these products, especially on mobile, all have this feed mechanic. Well, what is it about the feed? Well, let's take LinkedIn, for example. When you open up LinkedIn, the world's largest professional content site, when you open up LinkedIn, you're never quite sure what you're going to see. Okay, maybe the first story is interesting, or maybe the second story is interesting. No, how about the third or fourth? What do you have to do to see more interesting content? You have to keep swiping and swiping and scrolling. And that scrolling uses the exact same psychology as pulling on a slot machine, searching and searching for that next reward of the hunt. Finally, the last type of variable reward is what we call rewards of the self. Rewards of the self are things that feel good, that have this element of variability, but don't come from other people and aren't about the search for material or information rewards. These are things that are intrinsically pleasurable. They feel good in and of themselves. Now, these are all about the search for mastery, completion, competency, and control. And the best example I can think of online is, of course, gameplay. So when people play Candy Crush or Angry Birds or any number of other games, they're not really necessarily playing with other people in many cases. They're not winning anything in terms of material possessions. And yet there's something fun and exciting about getting to the next level, the next accomplishment, the next achievement. Now, I know everybody listening right now, you're all very serious business people. You don't play these games, right? Well, I bet you play this game every single day. How about this? Does this look familiar? Your email inbox, right? Email is probably the mother of habit-forming technology. Think about it. It has rewards of the tribe. Who is the message from? Rewards of the hunt. It's about what's in that email. Is it good news? Is it bad news? Did you get a raise? Did you get fired? Did the market go up, down, right? What information is in your inbox that you might want to check? And then it has rewards of the self, that mythical search for this magical place called Inbox Zero, that quest to read your messages, to clear them away. Or perhaps, if you think about your to-do list, checking off items, that involves rewards of the self. Or the thing that always gets me is when you get that, when you want to clear your home screen on your phone so that you can finally clear it away, it's all about the search for mastery, consistency, competency, and control.
Whenever someone sees my phone screen, they're like, how do you live like that? And it's just that it'll never be clear. Do you know what I mean? One time I spent 2 weeks on my email, like just my email. I didn't do anything else. This is before I had a lot of clients, and I think I got down to 21 messages in my email. And now I'm at over it'll never be below 500 ever again. So I've just sort of accepted that. And I have people who are like, "Oh, I don't know how you do it." And I'm like, I don't know how I would actually accomplish the inbox zero. I don't know how I would do it. And no, they're not marketing emails. I bundle those together. I unsubscribe as quickly as I can. But, even the other day, I periodically go through them and I had 700 new email subscriptions. If you think I signed up for 700 marketing emails in the last 30 days, no, I haven't. They're just mining my address, probably from LinkedIn or somewhere, and just selling it. So it's a total whack-a-mole situation. So I don't know if I check my email to feel good, but I definitely need to clear it out because typically there's someone on the other end waiting to hear from me.
Now, the point of the variable reward phase is to scratch their user's itch, to give them what they came for. There always has to be a connection and yet leave them wanting more. So remember, the internal trigger has to be scratched in the variable reward phase. So if the internal trigger is loneliness, well, then we have to connect people together. But if it's something else, let's say it's workplace stress, then the variable reward has to give people certainty and assurance. So don't try and use just some cheesy gamification technique like points and badges and leaderboards unless they are applied appropriately. You have to make sure that the itch is scratched in the variable reward phase to give people what they want, but again, leave them wanting more. This bit of uncertainty around what they might find the next time they engage with the product.
I will say I have had like potential clients and stuff come to me and they're like, okay, I'm going to do this app and it's going to fix everything. And part of the reason that I'm typically skeptical about these is that this thing he just said, which is that like, how are they going to get the thing from the app that you're building until it has users, until it has a track record, until it has products in it, if that's a thing? It's like building the ecosystem of it is pretty important for those things to happen.
Finally, the investment phase. The investment phase is probably the most overlooked of the 4 steps of the hook model. The investment phase is where the user puts something into the product to increase the likelihood of the next pass through the hook. Investments do this in 2 ways. The first way is by loading the next trigger. Loading the next trigger involves the user doing something themselves to bring themselves back. Okay, so something that I do to bring myself back, not some piece of spammy advertising or messaging, but something that I did intentionally so that I will come back in the future. Let me give an example. When you use WhatsApp and you send someone a message, there's no immediate reward, right? There's no points, there's no badges, there's no leaderboards. Nothing really happens when you send someone a message, other than the fact that when you sent that message, you are investing in the platform and you will likely load the next trigger because you are going to get a reply. And that reply, what's that on your screen right now? An example of an external trigger that prompts you through the hook once again. Okay. So the first way that investments increase the likelihood of the next pass through the hook is by loading the next trigger, bringing the user back by something that they themselves did.
I'll also say that's probably why, if you've ever had a product or a website or whatever, where you make a profile for them to see stuff, that the conversion is pretty low because they haven't felt the satisfaction and all the previous steps. They haven't felt, the action and the reward before the investment of setting up a profile. And I think that's probably why a lot of sites now say, log in with Google or log in with Facebook or whatever, because it's a balance of collecting your information while also requiring the person to invest a lot less time and energy into making their own profile, especially if they're not quite sure if they're going to end up using the website or not.
The next way that investments increase the likelihood of the next pass through the hook is by storing value. Now, storing value is a really big deal. right? In the history of manufacturing, when it comes to products that are made out of atoms rather than things that are made out of bits, everything in the physical world depreciates with wear and tear. When you think about your clothing, your car, your couch, all these things lose value with wear and tear. The more you use them, the less they're worth. Habit forming products do the opposite. They don't depreciate, they appreciate. They get better and better the more we use them because of this principle of stored value. So, for example, the more content you upload to a service like Dropbox or Google Drive, the more valuable it becomes as your cloud storage solution. The more data you give a service, for example, mint.com or any number of other services out there that use your financial information, the more information, the more data you give them, the better the service becomes. So that if you were to log into these services on my account, they actually wouldn't be that interesting for you. For example, think about if you logged into my Facebook account or my Twitter account, that information has been tailored based on the data I have given those companies just for me, based on my taste for a market size of one, because of the investment that I've made in those products in the form of my data. Followers, the more followers someone has, the better the product becomes. So think about with Twitter.
It's funny because the screenshots or the pictures he's using seem kind of older. So in the previous screenshot, it was looked like a banking app from 2012. There was a picture of the WhatsApp icon, and in the blurred part, there was like a picture of Foursquare, which is an app that hasn't existed for a while. And then here's a screenshot. It looks like a tweet from, I can't read if it's 2015 or 2016 or 2018, but and this presentation was done about a year ago, so probably sometime in 2021. So I'm kind of not sure why he hasn't taken fresh screenshots, but I guess if he keeps giving this talk, maybe it's just easy to just use what he already has.
If Twitter tomorrow were to say, hey, Twitter's not free anymore, okay, you have to pay for Twitter, who's more likely to keep using Twitter? Is it going to be someone with 10 followers or someone with 10,000 followers? Of course, it's going to be the person with 10,000 followers because they've stored all this value in the form of their follower count. And finally, reputation. Reputation is a form of stored value that users can literally take to the bank, because my reputation on Upwork or eBay or Airbnb determines what I can charge for my goods and services.
When I was on Airbnb, I was a super host. I don't have a big enough place to Airbnb anymore, but you know, that one shining moment.
And how likely am I to leave once I've accrued all this positive reputation? It's kind of hard to do. The product's suddenly very sticky. I'm not going to go to a different product, even if it's better, because I've stored all this positive reputation in one of these services. Which brings me to this cold, hard conclusion that you've been probably told a lie when it comes to your product management career. You've probably been told something along the lines, just build the best product and you'll win, right? Build a better mousetrap and the world will beat a path to your door. I'm here to tell you that is not true.
I agree that is not true.
That Silicon Valley graveyards are full of companies that had the best technology. Having great technology is not enough. That is table stakes. Everybody's got great technology. The companies that win are those that capture the monopoly of the mind. The first to mind solutions that we turn to with little or no conscious thought, out of habit. Those are the products that win. And so the companies that can design these experiences, these hooks into their product or service, trigger action, reward, investment, these are the companies that are able to shape consumer preferences and form these long-term habits. So if you are building a habit-forming product, this is the most important slide of the presentation. You've got to be able to answer these 5 fundamental questions of, number 1, what is the internal trigger that your product is addressing? What external trigger prompts your user to use? What is the simplest action done in anticipation of a reward? Is the reward fulfilling and yet leaves the user wanting more? And then finally, what's the bit of work done to increase the likelihood of the next pass through the hook? Now, after you ask yourself these questions, your job is going to be to change your product or service for the better based on these prompts, right? So the point of the hook model is to get you to ask yourself the right questions to build better product hypotheses. But how do you know if it's working? Well, you still have to build, measure, and learn, as Eric Ries says. You still have to try these things out and see if it's working. The best way I know to see if you're on the right track after you start coming up with these hypotheses is to use cohort analysis. And this is where a company like Amplitude is absolutely essential. So by using cohort analysis, which Amplitude makes extremely easy to do, you can tell whether the changes you make to your product experience are increasing the percentage of habituated users by comparing one cohort that has a treatment based on how you changed your hook model to another cohort that didn't have that same experience. And that's the only way that I know to make your product stickier by improving the hook model and tracking whether you're increasing the percentage of habituated users.
I'm kind of curious. I hope he gives an example of this, but I guess in the website world, we have something called A/B testing. So, like, you basically make two versions of your website. And so let's say, and you want to test one variable at a time, right? When you do A/B testing. So let's say I want to test the button color of my shopping cart. Let's just say all the buy now buttons are currently blue, and I want to try out a green button. So what I would do is I'd basically copy the website and only change the button color. And I would make it so that half of my website visitors got the blue button and half of them got the green button, what version of the website. And then I would look at data over time and I would see how they performed. Oh, the green button, it looks like after, 10,000 people experienced both of them, that the green button increased buying by 18%. All right, we're going to change the button to green for the website as a final decision. All right, what are we going to test next? Oh, should the button say buy now or learn more? We're going to test that text on the green button. All right, we're going to show half the people buy more, half the people learn buy now, half the people will see learn more. We're going to run that and have a certain number of people see it. So I'm wondering if this is just a more general way of this cohort analysis is basically like A/B testing, but it's just like a less specific use case like I just gave you, but I guess we'll see.
So having a tool like Amplitude to do cohort analysis is absolutely essential. If you don't have that backbone to see if it's actually working, you're flying blind, right? You can come up with the best product hypotheses. You can run all, you can implement in your product, but if you don't have the mechanics, if you don't have the tools in place, the infrastructure to test whether things are getting better, then it's all for naught. It's pointless.
I've been in meetings where people will argue about stuff like this. They'll be like, well, this isn't going to work, or people are going to think this when they read it. And what I always tell them when we're in these meetings is like, we actually don't know. We have to test it. Like, if I could predict people's behavior ahead of time without actually running an experiment, I could make so much money because basically I would be able to predict some pretty important things and probably make people a lot of money. So, yeah, you think you're improving something, but until you actually put it in front of other people and test it, you don't actually know if the change you did is an improvement or not.
Before we take questions, there's one more thing I want to talk about, which is the morality.
I wish you would talk about cohort analysis a little bit more, but
of manipulation, because I'm sure that many of you, as you were listening to my presentation, you were thinking to yourself, ugh, is this okay to do to people?
Yes, that's exactly what I was thinking. I wish you would have put this further.
Is this all right to use their hidden psychology to get them to do things we want them to do?
Mm-hmm.
If you had that reaction, I say bravo. I think that is the right response to learning about the power of habit-forming products, because let's face it, listen, any form of design, product design, usability design, graphic design, interior design, are all forms of manipulation. Anytime you are changing people's behaviors or emotions for your purposes, specifically commercial interests, that is a form of manipulation. But manipulation doesn't always have to be a bad thing. In fact, many times we want to be manipulated, because there are two kinds of manipulation. There's what we call persuasion, and then there's coercion. Persuasion is when we help people do things they want to do, right? So if we help people change their behavior and exercise more, eat better, save money, connect with loved ones, learn a new skill, these are ways that we want to be manipulated. We want our behavior to be changed. We want to be persuaded to do things that we ourselves want to do, but for lack of good product design, don't do. So that's perfectly ethical. The opposite end of the spectrum is coercion. Coercion is when we get people to do things they don't want to do, things they later regret. Not only is that bad ethically, it's bad for business, because in this.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I like to think I'm a highly moral person, but I also feel like my attitude probably makes my clients more money over time, even if it doesn't make them more money more quickly. But not by not appealing to people's negative states. The video I did, the second video I did on Jeff Lerner, I'll link it in the show notes, maybe in the cards if I remember to do that. But he talks about reaching the men he wants to reach are, you know, they're 40 years old, they don't spend enough time with their families, they work all the time. So like he is approaching people in a certain emotional state to try to sell them on his products, and some that felt really gross to me. And so yeah, I see like, okay, I want to design something that helps people remember to exercise, because that's my problem is like, unless it's in my calendar, it's not happening. You know, that's like, okay, if somebody wants to exercise more often and they want to be reminded, like they would sign up for my product, I would feel okay about that. But shaming them and saying, oh, you never exercise. I saw an advertisement the other day and it was, I forget what it was for. It was some healthy thing or something. And it was the Alexa talking to the woman in her kitchen. And it said like, oh, you know, well, there's that bag of lettuce that you bought that which you're not going to eat again, so you might as well just throw it out. I was like, okay, f off. This commercial is like mean. Um, and it's not like the woman was like, oh, I'm throwing away this salad again. Like, let me unpack it from my grocery bag and throw it directly. You know, she wasn't making a self-deprecating joke. This machine was being mean to her. And I was like, what the hell? That's not how you sell things. And it just goes to show you, I can't even remember the name of the product. All I remember was like, wow, that was kind of mean. That was kind of harsh. So yeah, I'm glad he's making this distinction.
This day and age, if you get people to do something they later regret, not only are they going to stop doing business with you, they're going to go on social media and tell all their friends not to do business with you either. So make sure you never build products and services that people regret using. Tricking people is not a good business strategy. You can do it once, but it's very hard to build a business that repeatedly tricks people. People are pretty smart. They
Yeah, and also like it costs more money to get a new customer than to get a repeat customer. So it's going to cost you a lot of money to do things that way too.
figure this stuff out, and they're going to shame you on social media if you get them to do something using coercive tactics. So persuasion is great, helping people do things they want to do. Coercion is unethical and should always be avoided. We have a very special responsibility in using these tactics because let's face it, these technologies are the tools we take to bed every night. It's the first thing we reach for in the morning before we say hello to our loved ones. So we have to ask ourselves, what responsibility do we have to use these tools for good?
I saw a presentation about 10 years ago, and the person giving the presentation, I can't remember who it was, but I'll always remember this. They said, you know, what you create is going to, like, people are going to see and they're going to carry within a foot of their body. And I was like, or it's within 3 feet of them at any given time. And so part of your ethicalness as a marketing person is to remember that you are within 3 feet of these customers. And so you should plan your messaging accordingly. You shouldn't be doing, you know, robocalls at 10 p.m. local time for them, or you shouldn't be doing them at all. But do you know what I mean? You shouldn't be sending like a lot of messages that would create notifications on the person's phone, right? That kind of thing. And as marketers, I think, yeah, we do have a responsibility not only to sell things to for our clients, but also to be responsible participants in the online world so that we're not creating problems for potential customers, right? So, yes.
I believe we can engage people in meaningful endeavors. We can help them build healthy habits to improve their lives. And I encourage you, if you'll allow me to take graces with the words of Gandhi, to build the change you wish to see in the world. And with that,
my God, that was my high school quote. Be the change you want to see in the world. I know 18-year-old Nicole was a little cringe.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure. I can't wait to take your questions. And while I do, if I can ask you for a quick favor, if you'd kindly go to this URL, opinion2.us. Notice it's not .com, it's opinion2.us. Or you can, if you have your phone, you can just point at that QR code with your camera and you'll be taken to a very short survey. It's only 5 questions. I would love to hear what you thought of the presentation. I read everyone's comments. So if you wouldn't mind just letting me know, it'll take you all of 30 seconds to complete the little survey. And as the reward, you see, I practice what I preach, you will get a link to my SlideShare page where you can have all the slides you just saw. Now, I know somebody's question is going to include, yeah, great, you told us about YouTube and Twitter. Those are consumer web companies, but I'm building an enterprise product, right? I'm building a B2B product. I know, I get this question all the time. I have a special presentation for everyone who is building enterprise products that's almost identical to what you saw, but instead of talking about WhatsApp and Facebook and YouTube, I talk about enterprise companies. If that is you, after you complete the survey, go to this link that you'll be shown and look for the presentation that says hooked in the enterprise. Same presentation, all enterprise examples, the same exact rules apply. And with that, I'd be happy to take questions. But if I don't get to your question, feel free to check out my blog, nirandfar.com. It's right there at the bottom. NIR's like my first name, nirandfar.com. And there's a form there that you can send me any questions you might have.
So the QR code does work. I just checked it and it takes you to a Google form. I'm curious why I would need to do this to get to his SlideShare. I feel like if I could just go to slideshare.net and search his name, I probably could find his slides, but maybe not. So I'm going to play the questions, but I might actually get rid of this part if it's too boring for the video.
And with that, let's take some questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Nir. I think I was on the chat section and people absolutely loved it. You might see some of these while you scroll through the chat, you might see some of it on the social. And some of them, actually, the first one that I was going to reach out to you with is someone did ask, hey, please can we have access to these slides? And I think you've done a perfect job. So I did share opinion to us on the chat section. Folks, please do fill in the feedback and you will have access to both the slides that Neil mentioned at the end of it. Great. We love the slides, honestly, Neil. Thank you so much. I think the last 30 minutes was a very concise and very useful 30 minutes that I've spent personally as well. We've seen a lot of questions come up on the Q&A tab. I've curated some of them. While we get started, folks, please could you take out 30 seconds to also help us upvote? I know there are way more questions than we will be able to take today, but we'd love to involve all of you all. So if you could just take out 30 seconds to help us upvote, we will start off with the most upvoted. And while folks are doing that, Neil, I think one of the slides that you mentioned, I think just want to go deeper on this, was you spoke about the entire hook model, right? And you also mentioned, hey, Amplitude is a great tool. So I want to understand a little more, tying it back to our entire product analytics 101. What is the role that data plays in building these habit forming? I know there's a
All right, we're not going to wait for them to aggregate the questions. I will just say that I know when I've worked with people as a virtual event production person, what we typically do is we're in the chat while the person's presenting and we're taking the questions and we're aggregating them off screen. So we're like putting them in like in a Google Doc or something like that. And then we're trying to sort of prioritize them or group them together. So typically sometimes people will ask, 3 different people will ask a question, but it's like similar. And so we'll group those together. And sometimes also like I will put the person's maybe first name or something in parentheses after the question so that if the person is answering it, it'll be like, oh, Donna asked us. So then they can like use the person's name, or if we need some additional information from Donna, we can refer to her, or the speaker can refer to her and maybe ask some clarifying questions to get at the root at, a little bit more specifically if they need to. So yeah, I think it's interesting that there's like an upvoting feature in whatever they're using for, it seems like they're using StreamYard or something like it, because when he was sharing his slides, it did have a pop-up that looked like StreamYard's pop-up for sharing slides, but they might be using something else, as the video part and then using StreamYard to distribute the video. So that's another way to do it, I guess, is to upvote questions. But I also think if you want the speaker to have some control over it, putting them in a separate document off screen that the speaker can see, and they can decide which ones they want to answer and in what order, is another way that you can do it as well. All right, so I have absolutely zero problems with Nir Eyal. I think the presentation was really interesting, and I understand that kind of the main part of it was to sort of introduce people to these terms and ways of thinking about things. I would have liked to hear more examples. In particular, I would have liked a little bit more about cohort analysis. I know that it sounds like one of the sponsors basically of this broadcast does that kind of thing. Even seeing like an example slide of like, here's a cohort analysis from this, sponsoring company. And this is, the cohort we were analyzing, and this is what we learned from it. And this is how we learned it would have been really great. But I thought I'd prepare us some short sort of summary if you kind of spaced out at different parts. I took some notes, so hopefully I did a good job here. So to hook someone on your product, there needs to be four things. There needs to be triggers, and I'll get into this in a second, an action, a reward, and then an investment. And these things, and the investment basically is you're something you do to load the next trigger. And so this becomes kind of a cycle. And the idea with the cycle is it becomes like a habit. And so you're a little bit hooked, right? So if you're thinking about triggers, internal triggers are a lot, something that comes from inside, sort of like, either trying to get at positive things. So either trying to connect with people, or if you want to frame it in a different way, avoiding loneliness or rejection. These kind of things are a lot more powerful than, say, an external trigger, which we're all used to, like our phone notifications and things that are coming from the outside world. Secondly, for there to be an action or behavior, there needs to be three things. There needs to be a trigger, right? If you're just sitting around and nothing in your environment changes or something, you're not going to be sprung into action, right? But you need the motivation for the action, which is the energy, right, to do the action. And then you need the ability to do the action. Like, how easy is it? So if you make an action too hard, or if the person needs a lot of motivation to do it, they're a lot less likely to do it than if the opposite is true. The third part, which is providing a reward, means that you're letting that itch the person has be scratched. So if somebody is trying to create good feelings and they use your product, you want there to be a good feeling created, right? So that the thing they did was actually successful. And what you want to do, ideally, if you can, is create rewards to be variable. So, like the mouse, Skinner's mouse, or no, they were pigeons. They were pigeons. He intermittently fed them pellets when they pushed on the button, and he found that they did the behavior more when they were intermittently rewarded than when they were rewarded each time for doing the behavior. And apparently, that's how it works with people too. People and pigeons, similar. And in terms of types of rewards, the rewards can be social, which is that they involve other people. They can be resource based. So, like, I went out to get something and I got it, whether that was a physical product or a recipe online or something. Or they can be self related. So, I've done this thing and I feel more energized, or I have done this and I now feel more happy or content, right? So, these are the different rewards they can get. It's not like a necessarily a physical object or a points or whatever, right? And the final step, which is the investment, is something that the person does to load the next trigger. They've invested in it, right? So the example he used is that you send a WhatsApp message, and the trigger, what starts the whole process again, is that when you get a response back, right? So once you are sort of rewarded, that you want to invest back into it. So maybe you create an account, maybe you upload something, maybe you respond to a comment. I don't know. It's just you put something into the system that will cause the next trigger, which will bring you through the whole 4-step cycle again. If we're going to improve our products, right, whatever, I'm assuming most of the people on this call are doing online products, we have to do a cohort analysis. So we have to try the improvement. And I'm guessing the cohort analysis is like an A/B test, but I'm not entirely sure. It sounds like basically, though, we can't just assume that what we're doing improves things unless we actually test it with real people. And what we want to keep in mind is that manipulation can be a good thing because manipulation can get people to do what they want to do. Maybe, they want to work out more. Maybe they want to, I don't know, live in a clean home, something like that. So if we manipulate them into working out or cleaning their house, that's a good thing because they actually want to work out and live in a clean house. But coercion is getting people to do something they don't want to do. And so we can't use this information or our products we're creating to do that. That would be bad. We don't want to coerce people. We want to manipulate people into doing the things that they want to do. And, the thing he also brought up was, because all these people on this call seemed like they were creating tech products or working in sort of a product development role, maybe at a tech company, that this idea that there is stored value in tech. So with physical products, like, for example, I have a product and over time it gets used up. So I was trying to do my nails during this presentation. This is my nail file. I probably need a new nail file. The more I use this, the more it gets worn out, the more likely I need, I'm going to need to replace it the more often I use it, right? Whereas with tech, if I upload more stuff to Google Drive, if I connect with more people on a social network, that is increasing in value over time because, those documents or those people I'm connecting with are getting bigger and bigger over time. And it's not like the product is wearing out or somehow getting worse, right? So these things have stored value, which makes them different than a lot of physical products. All right, so you can probably see where this ties into marketing, right? Which is that whether, you are a marketer like me, whether you own a business, or even if you're just like a regular person in the world interacting with companies, right? You can probably see through advertisements, through social media updates, website copy, email newsletters, all the different ways that companies reach us, how they might be using some of these techniques to hook us into their products, their tech products, or otherwise. And what we need to do is be savvy about that. Because, let's face it, sometimes you want to be hooked. But if you don't, you kind of know what to watch out for now, maybe a little bit, or at least you're aware that this process might be at play. And as a business owner, as a marketer, it's important to understand our responsibility in this. Yes, we want customers, but not at the expense of their mental health or well-being. Yes, we want clients, but not at the expense of getting at negative emotions to put them in a state where we can sell them something more easily. We need to be responsible. And ideally, we should be trying to improve people's lives with our products and services and not be coercing them against their will into spending money they don't have, into doing something that they don't want to do, into whatever with our businesses, because it's not worth it. Because you're going to alienate them, they're going to leave bad reviews, and it costs a lot more to get a new customer than it does to keep an existing one. So I think we should keep our existing ones happy and not annoy or manipulate the crap out of them. So thanks so much for watching. If you have an online guru you want me to react to, well, you can have them send me a series of marketing emails, or you can leave a comment on this video. I'm always looking for new people to react to. And if you're a little more shy, you can use the contact form of the website. That gets to me, and I will see your ideas in a little bit more of a private setting. So we'll see you next week with another guru, because let's face it, there's an infinite number of them and more being born every day. But the good news is you've got a friend in the marketing industry. Take care.